The Spice of Memory, a short story from When the Bells Stop Ringing by Danny Balan. Berlin in December was a city of shadows and lights. The sun set before 4 in the afternoon, leaving the streets draped in a heavy, damp twilight that seemed to cling to the wet pavement. Fatima walked briskly past the Weihnachtsmarkt at Gendarmenmarkt. The air was thick with the smell of Glühwein, mulled wine, and roasted sausages. To the tourists and locals, it was the scent of joy. To Fatima, it was the scent of exclusion. She was 24, but she felt 100 years old. It had been 2 years since she left Aleppo. 2 years since the bombs turned her neighborhood into dust, and 2 years since she had felt the specific, dry warmth of the Syrian sun. Here, the cold was wet. It seeped through her coat and settled in her chest. She adjusted her hijab, pulling it tighter against the wind, and hurried toward her apartment block in Neukölln. The building was a Plattenbau, a gray concrete slab from a different era, functional and ugly. She climbed the 4 flights of stairs to her apartment. The hallway smelled of cabbage and floor wax, the smell of Germany. Inside, she locked the door and leaned against it. Silence. It was Christmas Eve. Outside, families were gathering. She could hear the muffled sounds of a television from the apartment next door and the clinking of silverware. Fatima felt the ache of homesickness rise in her throat, a physical lump. She needed to banish the grayness. She needed color. She needed home. She went to the small kitchenette. On the counter sat a small jar of baharat, the 7-spice blend her mother had taught her to make. Black pepper, coriander, paprika, cardamom, nutmeg, cumin, and cloves. She opened the jar. The scent hit her like a physical memory. Suddenly, she wasn't in a gray apartment in Berlin. She was in her mother's kitchen, the sunlight streaming through the window, the sound of the street vendors calling out below. She began to cook. She didn't have much money, but she had chicken thighs, rice, and an eggplant. She would make Maqluba, upside down. It was a dish of patience and layering. She fried the eggplant until it was golden and soft. She seared the chicken with the spices, the oil sizzling and popping, releasing clouds of aromatic steam. She layered the meat, the vegetables, and the rice in the pot, then poured in the broth. As the pot simmered, the apartment transformed. The smell of cardamom and allspice pushed back the smell of damp wool and floor wax. It filled the small room, heavy and rich. It leaked under the door and into the hallway, a defiant declaration of existence. Fatima sat by the stove, closing her eyes, letting the steam warm her face. For the first time all day, her shoulders dropped. Knock, knock, knock. The sound was sharp, authoritative. 3 raps on her door. Fatima froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs. In this building, a knock usually meant a complaint. The music is too loud. The trash is in the wrong bin. The smell is too strong. She looked at the pot. The smell was strong. To a German nose, accustomed to potatoes and bread, the heavy spice of the Levant might seem offensive. She stood up, her hands trembling slightly. She smoothed her apron and walked to the door. She prepared her apology in broken German. Entschuldigung, es tut mir leid. She opened the door. Standing there was Frau Weber. Frau Weber was her neighbor from across the hall. She was a woman of sharp angles and iron-gray hair, always dressed in sensible beige cardigans. She was the kind of neighbor who left notes if the hallway wasn't swept on the correct day. Fatima braced. "Entschuldigung," she whispered. "I am cooking. I will open the window." Frau Weber stood in the doorway, her nose twitching. She inhaled deeply, her eyes closing for a brief second. "Open the window?" Frau Weber asked, her voice raspy. "Why would you let it out?" Fatima blinked, confused. Frau Weber opened her eyes. They weren't angry. They were curious, maybe even a little wet. "What is that smell?" Frau Weber asked. "It smells like a story." "It is Maqluba," Fatima said, stumbling over the word. "Chicken and spices. Cardamom. Zimt." "Cardamom," Frau Weber repeated. She looked past Fatima, toward the stove. She looked at the lonely table set for one. "You are eating alone?" Frau Weber asked. Fatima nodded, looking down. "Yes, my family is away." Frau Weber stood there for a moment, the silence stretching in the hallway. Then she nodded abruptly. "Wait!" She turned and marched back into her own apartment, leaving her door open. Fatima stood frozen. Wait for what? The police? The landlord? A minute later, Frau Weber returned. In her hands, she carried a plate covered with a paper napkin. "I am alone too," Frau Weber said matter-of-factly. "My husband died 5 years ago. My son lives in Munich and is too busy to drive up." She stepped into Fatima's apartment without waiting for an invitation. But her movement wasn't invasive. It was decisive. She walked to the small kitchen table and set the plate down. She pulled back the napkin. Inside were thick slices of a dense, white-dusted loaf. "Christstollen," Frau Weber announced. "It is heavy. It has marzipan and dried fruit. It is traditional. It is, how do you say, necessary." Fatima stared at the woman, then at the bread, back at the pot on the stove. "Please," Fatima said, gesturing to the chair. "Sit." The flipping of the Maqluba is the most important part. Fatima placed a large serving platter over the pot. With a prayer under her breath, she flipped it. She tapped the bottom of the pot, tap, 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 and lifted it. The cake of rice, eggplant, and chicken held its shape for a perfect second before settling into a steaming golden mound. "Wunderbar," Frau Weber whispered. They sat across from each other. Two women separated by 50 years, a language barrier and an ocean of culture. Fatima served the rice. Frau Weber ate slowly, savoring the spice. "It warms the blood," the old woman said, pointing to her chest. "Yes, it is the sun," Fatima smiled. When the rice was gone, they ate the stollen. It was dense, sweet and buttery, coating the mouth in sugar. It was the opposite of the sharp, savory rice. It tasted of winter comfort. "It is good," Fatima said. "It is heavy," Frau Weber corrected with a small smile. "Like all German things." They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. The wind rattled the window pane and the snow began to fall outside. But in the small kitchen, the air smelt of Aleppo pepper and Dresden sugar. Fatima looked at her neighbor. She realized that Frau Weber's sternness was just like the hard crust of the stollen, a way to protect the softness inside from the cold. "Merry Christmas, Frau Weber," Fatima said softly. The old woman reached across the table and patted Fatima's hand. Her skin was dry like paper, but her grip was warm. Frohe Weihnachten, Fatima. Fatima took a sip of tea. The ache in her chest hadn't vanished. She still missed her mother, her city, her life. But the sharp edge of it was gone, dulled by the presence of another human being. She wasn't eating alone. And in a city of shadows, she had found a kitchen that glowed.
A prayer for the scent of home. Let us speak now to the invisible ghosts that drift through the cracks beneath our doors. Let us speak to the memory that lives not in the mind, but in the nose. To the cardamom and the cinnamon, the cumin and the dill. To the heavy, stubborn sense of the places we have left behind, rising like prayers from our pots to settle in the hallways of foreign cities. We are all carrying the maps of our mother's kitchens in our blood, aching for the sun that tasted different, for the air that smelled of dust and jasmine instead of damp wool and concrete. Let us confess the bitter truth to one another. We are afraid of the smell of the stranger. We want our neighbors to be ghosts, silent, odorless, invisible. We build our apartments like fortresses of neutrality. We embrace the gray because it is safe. We fear that if we let the spices in, if we let the noise in, if we let the difference in, it will overwhelm the fragile order we have built. We ask the newcomer to whisper, to shrink, to boil their history until it is tasteless, so that we may feel comfortable in our isolation. Let us ask for the courage to be the one who cooks the loud food, to refuse to be erased by the greatness, to reclaim the right to take up space, to make a smell, to announce to the hallway, I am here, I am alive, and I have brought the sun with me. And let us ask for the grace to be the one who knocks, not to complain, not to police, not to demand silence, but to follow the scent of life back to its source, to stand at the threshold of a stranger's world and say, teach me what sustains you. May we realize that the table is the only border that matters. It is the place where the walls come down, where the upside-down rice meets the heavy winter bread and neither is asked to apologize for its nature, where the language of hunger and the language of comfort need no translation. Let us honor the bravery of the open door, the terrifying risk of inviting the other into our sanctuary, the humility of accepting a slice of bread that is dense and strange and finding that it tastes of welcome. So let us turn the pot upside down. Let us upend our expectations. Let us mix the spices of the Levant with the sugar of the North. And in that chaotic, fragrant mess, let us find the flavor of a new family. May our kitchens never be silent. May our hallways never be empty of the smell of cooking. And may we find that when we break bread with a stranger, we are not losing our home, we are making it bigger. The door is unlocked, the plate is full, let us eat.
You know, this story, it doesn't just start in a place, it starts in a feeling. It's this deep, profound grayness. You feel that cold immediately, that heavy, damp Berlin cold that sort of clings to everything. It's not just about the temperature, is it? It's the cold of being alone, of being displaced. But what makes it so powerful, I think, is the contrast. You're stuck in this heavy, lonely feeling, and then suddenly just bam, this incredible, unexpected smell just cuts right through all that gloom. It's like it transports you not just to another room, but across whole continents, across decades. Have you ever had that happen?
Yeah.
A smell that just completely hijacks your present moment. This whole story really hinges on that, on the idea that our biggest memories aren't in our minds, but locked away in our noses. Okay, so let's really dig into that opening. The setting in Berlin, it's so much more than just a background. It feels like a carefully built container for Fatima's emotions. The story describes it as a city of shadows and lights. That, to me, perfectly captures the whole paradox of Christmas in a big city.
It really does. It's that classic literary tension of the holidays, isn't it? On one hand, it's supposed to be this time of incredible joy and warmth and light. But if you're on the outside looking in, if you're displaced, all that celebration just makes your own loneliness feel sharper, more intense. The lights from the Christmas market, the Weihnachtsmarkt, they're beautiful, but they also cast these very, very long shadows.
And that physical cold is so central to that feeling of isolation. It's not just that the sun is gone before 4 in the afternoon, which is bleak enough. It's the kind of cold.
Absolutely. The description almost makes the cold sound like a weapon. It's wet. It seeped through her coat.
Yep.
That word seeped is so important. It suggests it's not a sudden shock, but this slow, unstoppable invasion, and then the final blow. It settles in her chest. Now, that's not just about feeling chilly. That's a direct metaphor. The outside weather has literally gotten inside her. It's mirroring her emotional state, that chilled, heavy feeling of displacement.
That's a great point. It's such a sophisticated use of pathetic fallacy where the weather reflects the mood because it feels so real. We've all felt a cold like that, one you just can't shake.
Yeah.
And then she walks past the Weihnachtsmarkt, the Christmas market.
Right, and here we get this huge sensory clash. The dominant smell there is glühwein and sausages. This is the absolute signature scent of a German winter. For anyone learning English, glühwein literally means glow wine. It's a hot mulled wine, with cinnamon, cloves, all those warm spices. It's a scent of comfort, the scent of joy, as the story says.
But for Fatima, that joy is immediately turned into something painful.
Precisely. For her, that exact same smell is the scent of exclusion. She's physically there, in the middle of Berlin, but she can't access the cultural comfort that smell represents. It draws an invisible border around her. The very air is reminding her that she's an outsider.
So she leaves that scent of joy behind and heads back to her reality, which is this cold, gray apartment block in Neukölln, the Plattenbau. We really need to talk about what that building represents.
We do. The Plattenbau is a really specific type of building, architecturally and historically. The name just means slab building. They're these functional, mass-produced apartment blocks made from prefabricated concrete slabs. See them a lot in former East Germany. And the story nails the description. A gray concrete slab from a different era. Functional and ugly.
Functional and ugly. Wow. What does living in a place like that do to you psychologically?
Well, it's about stripping away identity, isn't it? These buildings value uniformity and efficiency over everything else. They are the complete opposite of, say, the ancient organic streets of Aleppo. The Plattenbau is her sterile, unwelcoming present. It demands that she be quiet, colorless, and fit in.
And the smells inside the building continue that theme. The hallway has this very specific scent. Cabbage and floor wax the smell of Germany.
That line is so critical. It's a bit ironic, too. The smell of Germany, in this context, isn't, beautiful forests or bakeries. It's order and utility. Floor wax means constant, rigid cleaning. Cabbage is just basic, heavy food. It suggests life has been boiled down to its bare essentials, with none of the fragrant, complex, loud richness of her home. And this sterile backdrop is what makes her act of cooking so powerful later on. It becomes an act of defiance.
Which brings us right to Fatima's inner world. That environment, inside and out, has just worn her down. She's only 24, but she felt 100 years old.
That line says everything about the weight of her trauma. When you've lived through war, when you've seen your home destroyed and had to start over in a place that feels alien and cold, you age differently. She's carrying a lifetime of loss from just the last 2 years. That feeling of being 100 years old. It's the exhaustion of survival.
And she's constantly setting up that contrast in her mind, the dry warmth of a Syrian sun against the wet Berlin cold. It's about more than just weather.
Exactly. The Syrian sun is dry. It's clean, healing. The Berlin cold is wet. It soaks into you, makes everything feel heavy. It's the difference between a place that nourished her soul and one that feels like it's trying to drown it. Her homesickness is so intense it becomes a physical lump in her throat.
But she doesn't just give in. She recognizes she has to fight the grayness. She has this moment of decision. She needed color. She needed home.
And that's the turning point. She shifts from being a passive observer of her own sadness to an active participant in her own healing. She decides the only antidote to the sterile, odorless Plattenbau is to create her own cultural vibrancy. And her only tool for that is her kitchen.
Yes, the spices. That jar of baharat. The story calls it a map back to her mother's kitchen. Why is that specific blend so important?
Baharat is a key term here. In Arabic, it just means spices, but in the Levant, it's a very specific 7-spice blend. The story lists them all: black pepper, coriander, paprika, cardamom, nutmeg, cumin, cloves. That's not random. This is a very particular recipe for a memory. It's complex, it's aromatic, it's loud, it's family history in a jar.
And when she opens it, the smell hits her like a physical memory, not just a scent, a physical force.
The power of that wording is immense. It shows that scent isn't just about remembering, it's about transportation. For that one moment, the gray kitchen in Berlin is gone. She is back in the sunlight of her mother's kitchen in Aleppo. The aroma lets her override her physical reality.
And the dish she makes is just as symbolic. Maqluba, the upside down.
The symbolism is just beautiful, isn't it? Maqluba means inverted or upside down. It's a celebratory dish with rice, meat, and vegetables all cooked in one pot. For a refugee whose entire life has literally been turned upside down, making this dish is an act of reclaiming that chaos and turning it into something whole and beautiful.
It's described as a dish of patience and layering. That process feels like a metaphor for rebuilding your life.
It is, absolutely. You have to carefully layer the ingredients, trusting that it will all hold together. It's like the patient work of building a new life, piece by piece, memory by memory. You need faith that when you finally turn that pot upside down, it will reveal something perfect and golden, not just a mess.
And as it cooks, the battle of the smells begins. The story says the cardamom and allspice start to push back against the damp wool and floor wax.
Yes, it's the climax of the sensory war we were talking about. The Baharat is winning. The scent fills her apartment, and then, this is the crucial part, it leaks out under her door into that sterile hallway. The story calls it a defiant declaration of existence. She is refusing to be invisible. She is refusing to make her history tasteless. She is announcing with this beautiful aroma, I am here, my home is here.
And that moment of peace she finds with the steam on her face, it's shattered by that knock on the door. The whole mood just shifts on a dime, doesn't it? The knock is described as sharp, authoritative, and her first reaction is just pure terror, her heart hammered against her ribs. Why is a knock from a neighbor so terrifying here?
Because in a place like the Plattenbau, an environment built on rules and order, a sharp, authoritative knock is never a friendly hello. It's almost always a complaint. It means you've broken a rule. The music is too loud, the trash is in the wrong bin, or in this case, the most likely fear, the smell is too strong. For someone in her position, a complaint isn't just an annoyance. It feels like a threat to her very existence there.
And her first instinct is to apologize. She starts practicing the German phrases she knows. Entschuldigung, es tut mir leid.
Which is such a powerful detail. For our language focus, Entschuldigung is, excuse me, or I apologize. Es tut mir leid is, I am sorry. She's already accepted guilt. She's ready to retreat, to apologize for simply existing too loudly, for daring to let her culture spill out into the hallway.
And then she opens the door, and there stands Frau Weber, the perfect embodiment of the cold, rigid order that Fatima was afraid of.
Exactly. She's described with sharp angles and iron gray hair, always in sensible beige cardigans. She is the neighbor who leaves notes about the sweeping schedule. The story builds her up as the antagonist we're expecting.
But then comes the twist, the complete reversal. Frau Weber doesn't complain. She just stands there, her nose twitching, and then she closes her eyes to breathe it in.
That's the moment. That's the threshold. Closing her eyes is a sign of surrender, of letting a sensory experience take over. Fatima offers to open a window, to get rid of the smell, to shrink back down. And Frau Weber asks, why would you let it out? That question just shatters all the tension and expectation. The smell isn't an offense, it's an invitation.
And then that incredible line, what is that smell? It smells like a story.
That's the heart of it all. Frau Weber, this woman who seems to live a life of pure function and routine, immediately recognizes that this complex smell has a narrative. It carries history, a whole life lived somewhere else, and she immediately connects it to loneliness when she sees the table set for one. The smell didn't lead her to a problem, it led her to another human being.
The shift from suspicion to connection is so fast, but it feels completely real because it's based on that shared feeling of being alone.
It is. And Frau Weber comes back and offers her own passport to enter Fatima's world, which is her confession. I am alone too. Loneliness becomes the universal language they both speak perfectly. It's the bridge between them.
She doesn't even wait for an invitation, she just walks in, which feels decisive, not rude. She puts her own offering on the table, and just like that, the barrier is gone. And what she brings is the perfect culinary contrast to Fatima's savory, sun-filled Maqluba.
It is. She brings a crisp stollen, or just stollen as it's often called. It is an absolute staple of a German Christmas. It's a very dense, heavy bread filled with dried fruit, nuts, and usually a rope of marzipan running through the middle. It's all covered in this thick layer of powdered sugar. It is the taste of a Northern European winter through and through.
And I love how Frau Weber presents it. She says, it is heavy, it has marzipan, it is traditional, it is necessary. That need for this specific kind of comfort.
Yes, it's a necessary ritual to fight back against the cold and the dark. And that sets up this beautiful balance on the table. You have the Maqluba savory, golden, full of the warm spices of the south, and the stolen dense, sweet, white embodying the heavy comfort of the north. Opposites that are about to come together. The flip is everything. If it falls apart, the whole symbolic act is, well, it's a mess. But it works. The cake of rice and chicken holds its shape perfectly. It's a small miracle of stability in a chaotic world.
And Frau Weber's reaction is just one whispered German word: wunderbar.
A perfect word. It means wonderful or marvelous. But coming from her, a character who seems so reserved, it's this huge expression of awe. It's a complete surrender to the beauty of the moment.
So they sit down, these two women from completely different worlds, united by these two dishes, and Frau Weber says something profound after tasting the Maqluba. She says, "It warms the blood."
It's such a great phrase. She's recognizing that the warmth from this dish is internal, active. It's the metaphorical sunshine that Fatima cooked into it. The warmth of vitality in life, not just temperature.
And then they eat the stollen, which is heavy and sweet and comforting in a completely different way. And that's when Frau Weber has this moment of self-deprecating humor.
She does. She smiles and says, "It is heavy, like all German things." It's this wonderful moment of self-awareness. She's acknowledging the stereotype of German seriousness and formality, and she's contrasting the density of her own tradition with the fragrant lightness of Fatima's. She gets it.
And what's maybe most important about this whole meal is how little they actually talk. The food and the shared silence do all the communicating.
The silence is where the real connection happens. Outside, the wind is howling, but inside, the air smells of Aleppo and Dresden. The lack of words proves that you don't need a shared language when you have a shared human need.
And that quiet space allows Fatima to have this huge insight about Frau Weber. She realizes her sternness was like the hard crust of the stolen away to protect the softness inside from the cold.
That metaphor is so key. The hard crust is a defense mechanism. It's the formality, the rules, the beige cardigans, all built up over years to protect a vulnerable person from the loneliness of the world. Fatima sees that the coldness she feared was just a shield.
And then the exchange of Christmas greetings feels so earned.
It does. Fatima says, "Merry Christmas, Frau Weber." And Frau Weber replies with the traditional German Frohe Weihnachten, Fatima. For our listeners, Frohe Weihnachten means joyful Christmas. By using the formal German phrase but saying Fatima's first name, she's welcoming her into the tradition, into the moment.
Which leaves Fatima in this new emotional space. The story says the ache of her loss isn't gone, but the sharp edge of it was gone, dulled by the presence of another human being.
And that's the real comfort, isn't it? Connection doesn't erase trauma, but it makes the present livable. And that final image. In a city of shadows, she had found a kitchen that glowed. That glow isn't from a light bulb. It's human.
And this is where the story expands, right? It moves from this one beautiful, intimate moment to a much broader, more universal statement about community.
Exactly. The story uses this Christmas Eve encounter to talk about a kind of shared humanity that has nothing to do with a specific religion. The healing comes from the simple act of hospitality. The presence of another person is the true source of spiritual light in the story.
The glow they create isn't about doctrine. It's about the basic human need for warmth and acceptance. It suggests that sharing food is, in itself, a sacred act.
The table becomes the sanctuary. It's the one place where age and culture and language and belief systems all become secondary to the simple act of sharing a meal. And that idea really sets the stage for the powerful reflection that comes after the story, a prayer for the scent of home.
Right, that transition is brilliant. It reframes the whole story as a kind of parable. Let's dig into that prayer because it speaks directly to the fears that keep us all so isolated.
It starts by talking about the invisible ghosts that drift through the cracks beneath our doors. It's about suppressed memories, suppressed histories, and again, it's all about scent. Memory lives not in the mind, but in the nose.
And then it gives us that core idea, that amazing line, "We are all carrying the maps of our mother's kitchens in our blood." That's such powerful imagery. Food isn't just food, it's our inherited identity, our geography.
And that inheritance immediately runs up against the bitter truth of modern society. The prayer confesses we are afraid of the smell of the stranger. That fear is the root of all this isolation. We think an unknown smell means chaos, mess, a loss of our own control.
The critique here is so sharp. It says we want our neighbors to be silent, odorless, invisible. We build these fortresses of neutrality like the hallway in the Plattenbau because the grayness feels predictable, it feels safe.
And that safety comes at a huge cost to the newcomer. The demand on them is to whisper, to shrink, to boil their history until it is tasteless. That phrase is just devastating. It's a perfect critique of assimilation, the idea that to fit in, you have to erase your own flavor.
So the story isn't just about Fatima's personal fear, it's about the systemic pressure on her to disappear. And that makes the two courageous acts the prayer asks for so revolutionary.
They're acts of rebellion against that grayness. The first is for the newcomer, for the displaced person. It's the courage to cook the loud food.
To cook the loud food, I love that. It means refusing to be erased. It's
Yeah.
about reclaiming your right to take up space, to make a smell, to announce to the world, I am here, I am alive, my history matters. It turns cooking into a political act.
And the second courage is for the person who is already there, the settled resident, the Frau Weber. It is the courage to be the one who knocks, but, and this is the whole point, to knock with the right intention.
Right, the intention of the knock is everything. It's not knocking to complain or police or demand quiet. It's knocking because you're following the scent of life back to its source. It's an act of curiosity and humility. It's saying, teach me what sustains you.
That one shift, transforming the knock from a threat into an act of grace, is the central challenge the story gives us. It requires us to drop our own defenses and admit that we also need something more than just silence and floor wax.
Which brings it all together in that final, beautiful conclusion.
Yes. The defining quote that we should all take away from this: may we realize that the table is the only border that matters. It just erases all the other artificial lines we draw, national, cultural, whatever, and replaces them with the boundary of a shared meal. When you sit at a table together, those other walls just dissolve.
It's the most fundamental act of connection. The prayer tells us to upend our expectations, just like the Maqluba, and to mix the spices of the Levant with the sugar of the North.
And the result is a chaotic, fragrant mess. And that's where true family, true community is found. It's not in sterile uniformity, but in the rich, messy, beautiful blend of our different stories.
The story ends with this incredibly hopeful promise that when we break bread with a stranger, we aren't losing our home, we are making it bigger.
It completely redefines home. Home isn't a building. It's a space created by warmth, by memory, and by sharing. It's a kitchen where the door is unlocked and the invitation is always open. That table is the real sanctuary.
This story just leaves us with so much to think about. That journey from cold isolation to fragrant warmth is driven by two simple things: the courage to cook your loud food and the grace to be the one who knocks to share it. It makes you wonder, what loud food could you cook this season? And whose door could you knock on, not to complain, but just to follow the scent of life and find a connection? We hope you related to this story. If these moments of quiet connection and hope resonated with you, we're thrilled to tell you that the full collection, When the Bells Don't Ring by Danny Ballin, is now available on Amazon and everywhere books are sold. Danny wrote this book to bring a little light to the quieter, sometimes harder moments of the season. It makes for a truly meaningful Christmas gift for anyone who loves literary fiction and heartwarming tales. You can find the link to buy or gift a copy right now in the description. Thank you for listening and for reading. We'll see you in the next episode. Never stop learning and hoping with English Plus Podcast.